Begin today the Gemara on Daf Mem Daled, 10 lines down from the top of the Yomud. So the Gemara quotes what it said in the Mishnah, Kol sheyesh loy matirin, that when there's a part of the carbon that there's an avodah before that is done in order to be matir, this to be used, whether bein lo odam, that the person will eat this part of the carbon, or bein lo mizbeach, or to take this part of the carbon and burn it on the mizbeach, chayav and olav mishum pigul. That's where the chiyuv of pigul applies, meaning that the status of pigul takes effect on it, and if you eat from it, you'll be chayiv kares. So, for example, when you spray the blood on the mizbeach, so you're done with that avodah, you're done with the kapara, what happens? It's now matter to take the meat of the carbon and eat from it, the emurim of the carbon, which is the sacrificial parts, and burn it on the mizbeach. So it's on those things that became mutter from something else that the isser of pigul, the chiyuv of kares for pigul, will apply to it. But how about, for example, regarding the blood itself? The blood itself, there's nothing else that's matter it. On the contrary, it is an aveda that's done to be matter the basar and the emurim. So if someone would drink from the blood, he's over on another isser, but not the chiyuv kares of pigul does not apply to it. There's other examples as well, but that's one example.
How did the pickle start though?
The machshava of the person that he's going to eat the carbon shaloi bizmanai or be makir the carbon shaloi bizmanai. Okay. That's the concept of pigul. So here the Gemara brings a braisa that brings the source of this Indian in the pasuk. Tan Rabbanon. So we learned in a braisa. The beginning of this braisa, the Gemara doesn't quote it all the way from the beginning. It starts in the middle. Rashi says that in the pasuk, the source of pigul in the Torah, it says regarding shlomim, and there in the pasuk it says v'ma'achli yacham mipsar zevach shlomov. So you would think that the Indian of pigul should apply only by a carbon shlomim or things that are similar to the carbon shlomim. That's where the braisa is coming in. So maybe I should say that since in the pasuk it speaks about the shlomim regarding pigul, so only other karbanis that are similar to the shlomim, there pigul would apply. What does that mean? Ma shlomim yichadim. Just like the carbon shlomim is unique in the sense that nechal l'shnei yomim v'layla echad, that you can eat from it for 2 days and a night. Avkol, so too only all other karbanis that are nechal l'shnei yomim v'layla echad, if you can eat from it from 2 days and a night. But if it's nechal yom v'layla, those karbanis, the kachim, that you can eat from it only for a day and a night, minayin, how do I know that the halachas of pigul apply to those karbanis as well? They're not similar to the shlomim. Talmud Loimar, in that pasuk it says an extra word, mibsar, mibsar zevach shlomov. So if you learn from this that even other karbanis as well, and that is that kol sheshirayin nechalin, any carbon that there's a part of it that you burn in the mizbeach, and then there's a part of the basar that you don't burn in the mizbeach, and that the kohen eat or the owner eats, that is enough of a reason to say that it's similar to shlomim, that the halach of pigul would apply. Furthermore, the Braisa says oila. However, what happens with a carbon oila that's completely not similar to the shlomim? Because she'ein shi'eren nechalin. There's no part of the carbon oila that you could eat. You burn it entirely on the mizbeach. So minayim, from where do I know that the din of pigul applies to this carbon as well? Talmud Loimar, there's another extra word in the pasuk. It says yachach mipsar zevach shlomov. So the word zevach is also extra. Zevach means another kind of carbon, including the oila that's not similar to the shlomim at all. Furthermore, the Braisa says, "Minayin l'rabais ha'oifais v'hamenachais." How do I know that the din of pigul applies when you're bringing a bird as a carbon, or even a carbon mincha, a flour carbon as well? The din of pigul applies. Add to the extent that it can be marbe even more. Shani marbe loik shemen shel mitzayra. Even regarding not something that's b'chlal brought and burnt in the mizbeach, the loig of the oil that's used in order to what's done with this loig of the oil, you pour it into the palm of the kohen, and then the kohen takes from it with his finger and he sprays 7 times against the pareiches, and then on the ears and on the fingers and on the toenails of the mitzayra. So how do I know that the din of pigul applies even to this oil by the mitzayra? Talmud Loimar, the pasuk says, and now this is a pasuk that does not say by pigul, but it says it by tumah, not to be metame kachim. So the pasuk says, Asher heim magdishim li. It said at the beginning of that pasuk there, it says, V'yunozru mekachim b'nei Yisrael. Yidden should stay away from kachim when they're tamei. V'lo yechallu Hashem kachi Hashem magdishim li. Not to desecrate the karbanis. So we learn out from the tumah in this pasuk, just like regarding this halacha of tumah, the pasuk is saying this regarding every single kind of karbanis, all kachim. So we learn from there that the same applies to pigul. How do we learn from Tumah to pigul? So here the Gemara interjects and brings the way this is learned out. There's a double Gzeira Shaveh here. Because va'asi Naisar, the halacha of Naisar that it says in the Torah in certain karbanis explicitly, that if you leave over the carbon after it's time that you're supposed to eat from it, it becomes Naisar, and if you eat from it, you chayav kares. So, but it doesn't say the halacha of Naisar by every single one of the kachim. Now, how do you know that Naisar applies to all karbanis? Because there's a Gzeira Shaveh that you learn Naisar from the halacha of Tumah. Chilul mitumah. This pasuk of Ashahei Makdishimli, it says there v'lo yechalalu, and it says there clearly as that Ashahei Makdishimli, it refers to any kachim that you're makdish to the Eibishter, and so to benegeh to Naisar, it also uses the term v'lo yechalalu, or by Naisar, the exact lashon of the pasuk there. It says, I have here on the side, they bring the pasuk. So Hashem Tumat of Nichzanav Shehim Lefana Ani Hashem. 1 second. For Eichlav Avanisa, Kes Kaidesh Hashem Chilel. It also uses the term Chilel. So we learn out from there, Mituma, to say that the halacha of Naisar applies by all kachim. Okay, so that's regarding Naisar. But now there's a second Gzeira Shaveh. Once I know regarding Naisar that it applies by all karbanis, V'asi Pigul Ovain min Naisar. Then there's a second Gzeira Shaveh, the term Ovain, that it says regarding Pigul, it says Avayna Tisa, and then there's the lashon of Avain that it says regarding Naisar, for Eichlav Avayna Yisa. So just like Naisar applies to all karbanis, so too the halacha of Pigul applies to all karbanis. So that's the conclusion. So from here I see that it applies to all karbanis, including even something that's related to a carbon like the oil. You don't even burn on the mizbeach at all. It's not related to blood or a carbon. It comes together with it, but it's not. So that's the chiddush here. Okay, so now back to the lashon of the Braisa. If since now we see, we do include everything, all kind of karbanis, to be in the halacha of pigul, so lama nema shlamim. So why, when the Torah says the halacha of pigul, there is a point out specifically shlamim? So now why is it saying shlamim? The answer is, and here comes the point that it said in the Mishnah. To tell you that there is something we learn out from the shlamim. Ma shlomim yuchodim, just like the shlomim. What's unique over here? Sheyesh lehem matirin bein laadam bein lemizbeach. That we're talking about the fact that there's the avodas that are done with it, with the dam. That when you finish that avodah, then it's matir the basar for the person to eat, or the emurim for the mizbeach. And it's on that basar or on that emurim that there's something else that's being matir it. That if you have the machshava of shalei bizmanoi, instead of being matir it, the status of pigul takes effect, and if you eat from it, you chayav kares. Af kol, so too the halacha of pigul that does apply to all karbanis, but it only applies in that part of the carbon sheyesh loy matirin bein laden bein lemizbeach. If there's something else that's being matir it, whether for the person, whether for the mizbeach, then chayav nalei mishum pigul. If you eat from that part of the carbon, you'll be chayav for pigul. And here the Gemara brings the examples for this, which it said already before in the Mishnah. So ha'ayla, regarding the carbon ayla, dama, when you spray the blood on the mizbeach, mater es besar al mizbeach. After you're done with spraying the blood, that's when you're able to then take all of the carbon, including the meat, everything of the carbon, to be burnt on the mizbeach. So that basar that's burnt on the mizbeach is something that became permitted to get it done by the blood that was sprayed before. So it's on this that pigul takes effect. Or va'ira, l'kayanim, the hide of the carbon ayla that goes to the kayanim only have the heter to take that hide after the dam is sprayed. Or ayla sa'if, by a ayla with a bird, dama, after you squeeze the blood onto the mizbeach, mater es besara le-mizbeach. So then that now permits you to take the meat and burn it on the mizbeach. By the chata sa'if, dama, after you squeeze the blood onto the mizbeach, mater es besara le-kayanim. The kayanim can eat from the basar of this oif. By the param anisrafim, usi'irim anisrafim. So this is certain karbanis chatas that you take the blood and you spray it inside the Beis Hamikdash on the inside mizbeach, and then there are the sacrificial parts that you burn on the mizbeach. But then what do you do with the basar? You don't eat the basar. You take it outside of the machna and you burn it there. So over here also there's a part of the carbon that you could say that there's something else, an aveda before, that's being mater it. Damam mater es emureim likarev. The blood that you spray on the inside mizbeach will then be mater to take the emurim, the parts of the carbon that you burn on the mizbeach, to now be burnt on the mizbeach. So these are all karbanis where there are parts of it that became mutter from something else that was done before. Their pigul takes effect, like the shlomim. However, but what do I exclude here from this? Es hakaimitz, the fistful itself that you burn on the mizbeach. There's nothing else that's matter it. On the contrary, this kaimitz that you burn on the mizbeach, it is matter then to eat from the leftovers. So over here, on this kaimitz itself, the halacha of pigel, that if you would eat from it to be chayav kares, does not take effect. And the same thing with salavina, the frankincense, there's nothing that's being matter it. Adarabba, it is matter other things. Or the ketairis that you burn in the mizbeach. There's no bloods, there's nothing else that's being matter it. Or minchas kayanim, the mincha that a kayin brings, even if you donate it, has to be burnt fully on the mizbeach, and there's nothing else that's matter it. Or minchas kayim mashiach, the carbon mincha that the kayin gadol brings every day, that has to be burnt completely on the mizbeach. Or minchas nesachim, the minchas nesachim is also completely poured or burnt on the mizbeach. There's the wine and there's the flour that's completely burnt on the mizbeach, and there's nothing else that's matter it. It actually depends when this minchas nesachim is brought. We'll see soon in the Gemara. The Mishnah brought it before, that the minchas nesachim could be brought together with the carbon on the day of the carbon itself. So then you could say that when you complete the carbon, that's then matter to bring the minchas nesachim. But then all the minchasam v'niskeim that we always say in Musaf, that you bring with the carbonis, it does not have to be brought on the same day as the carbon itself. It could be brought later, on another day. So then when it's brought separately, so then you can't say that there was the carbon before that was matter it. It's a separate thing that you're bringing today, and you burn it completely on the mizbeach. And v'hadam, the blood that you spray from the carbon, you can't say something else is matter this blood. Adarabba, this blood is going to be matter than the other stages of the carbon. So on the blood itself, if you drink from it, you're not going to be chayiv kares for pigel. Rab Shimon, he says this, that when the Torah writes a din of pigol regarding shlomim, so he says, we do learn out from shlomim. That has to be more specifically, exactly like the shlomim. Ma shlomim yuchadim, sheyesh ba'al mizbeach achitzen, just like the shlomim is unique on the fact that you spray from the blood of the shlomim on the outside mizbeach. The chayavin olav, and that's where pigol applies. That's where the pasuk originally says it. Av kol sheyeshnon al mizbeach achitzen chayavin olav. So it has to be a carbon where the blood is sprayed on the outside mizbeach. Then chayavin olav mishum pigol. Then there's pigol. So the yatsu parim anisrafim mesirim anisrafim. So two of the cases mentioned before by the Tanakama here, and that is the parim anisrafim mesirim anisrafim. They are karbanis chatos that the blood is brought inside the Beis Hamikdash to be sprayed. Hayil she'enol mizbeach achitzen kishlamim. It's not sprayed on the outside mizbeach like the shlamim, only on the inside mizbeach. Ein chayavin olav mishum pigol. So there's no halacha of pigol. So Rab Shimon says, we do learn out from Shlomim to limit more specifically that it does not apply to all kachim. Only karbanes that the blood is sprayed on the outside mizbeach. Till there is a quote from the Braisa. So now the Gemara goes through explaining different details of this Braisa. So the Tana said in the Braisa that maybe I would think to say kayetze b'shlomim, that only karbanes that are similar to the shlomim, that you can eat it for 2 days and a night, for there the din of pigol should apply. Mind you, what would be something that's similar to the shlomim? So b'chayr, when you bring the firstborn as a carbon, that's similar to the shlomim. Why? Because the nechal is shnei yom v'layla echad. That also can be eaten for 2 days and a night. Says the Gemara, but b'mayasi, how would you learn out the b'chayr from the shlomim to say that just like by shlomim there's the din of pigol, by b'chayr as well there should be a din of pigol? Are we going to just learn it out by means of comparison? Just comparing it to the shlomim. But it's not compared, because Ikal Mifrach, you could refute and say, Ma l'shlamim, when it comes to the shlamim, it has certain stringencies that do not apply to the b'chayr. Because Shaheim Tun and Smicha, you have to lean on the head of the carbon before you bring it, and then on Nesachim, you have to bring also the Nesachim as well that don't apply by the b'chayr, and also Tnufas Chazav V'Shaik. There's the halacha of lifting up certain sections of parts of the animal, body of the animal, the chazah and the sheikh, which you see here, three chumres that don't apply to the b'chayr. So how could you just misvara, compare and learn the b'chayr from the shlamim? Ella says the Gemara, it's not just a mematzinu, we're not just stam comparing. Ella me'im he'achel ye'achel. We're learning it out from the fact that in the pasuk here regarding the shlamim, it says, on one hand, the pasuk says very specifically that we're talking about shlamim, mipsar zavach shlamov. But it also says, he'achel ye'achel, which means if you will eat from any carbon. That's a klal. And we have two klalim here. Ha'achel is one klal, ye'achel is second klal, and then mipsar zavach shlamov is the prat. So what the Gemara here is saying is that this is a klal, uprat, uklal. What's the rule when you have a klal, uprat, uklal? When the Torah writes a klal, and then it writes a prat, so the prat is coming to spell out that it's only for this specific thing that the Torah is saying. When the Torah adds another klal, a second klal, it's coming to say that we include other things as well, as long as it's ke'en aprat. Right? So over here as well, the Gemara now is saying that it says, hey, ochel, ye ochel, that's two klalim, and then it says shlomim, which is the prat, so that's a klal, a prat, a klal. Now the Gemara clarifies this. How can you say that? Hani, trei klali, the smichi adodininu. Yeah, you do have an expression of a klal in the pasuk twice, but it says it together. It says first, hey, ochel, ye ochel, and then it says specifically shlomim. So we should say that it's only shlomim. Amarave, or the other gear says Amaravine, he says, Ked Amri b'Marave, in the West and Eretz Yisrael, they said, Kol Mokim Shatamoitze Shnei Klolis Esmuchim Zelazeh. If you find in the Torah that it repeats the same klal, one right after the other, and then there's a prat that comes afterwards in the pasuk, Hatel Prat Beinayim, you take the prat and you put it between the two klalim, V'daina b'klal prat. And we darshan it like a klal, or prat, or klal, to say that it has to be ke'en a prat, and therefore that's the beginning of the brayse that I would say here, that you only chayev for pigel for something that's similar to the shlomim when it's eaten for 2 days and a night, which would be the b'chayr. Okay, then the brayse goes on to say, chani marbe loik shemesh al mitzayra, that we're marbe even more. We're marbe to learn out from the Gzeira Shaveh, that the Gemara said, from Tumeh, then from Neisar, to say that you apply the din of pigel even regarding the oil of the mitzayra. Okay, so simply what does this mean? If the kayin had the machshava of pigel when he sprays the blood of the carbon of the mitzayra, the mitzayra brings the carbon asham, and when he's spraying the blood of the asham, he had a machshava of pigel, so then not only the other parts of the carbon asham itself, the status pigel will take effect, but even regarding the oil that then placed on his ears and so on, that usually what happens with the leftovers of that loik shemen? Loik shemen is a lot of oil. You only use very little bit of it to spray against the pereches and put it on the different parts of the body of the mitzayra. The leftovers of that you could then eat. But if the kayin had the machshava of pigel when he sprayed the blood of the asham, so then what happens to the leftover oils is the status of pigel takes effect, that if you drink from that oil, you chayev kares. So the Gemara says, Halmani, who is the one that says this? Rab Meir. This is Rab Meir's opinion. Because the Tanya, we learned in the Braise, Loik Shemesh al Mitzayre, this Loik Shemesh of the Mitzayre, Chayav and Olav Mishum Pigel. There is the Chayav of Pigel for this. Okay, and as was divided Rab Meir, this is Rab Meir's opinion. We had this basically also before in the Mishnah, as we'll see soon in the Gemara here. When does Rab Meir say this? Only if that Loik Shemen is being brought and being done on the same day together with the carbon asham. Similar to what I said before regarding the Nesachim that could be brought later on. Regarding the Loik Shemen, it can be brought up to 10 days later. So if it's brought on a different day, then the pigel is not going to take effect in the loik shemen. It's being brought separately. But when the loik shemen is being brought on the same day with the carbon asham, so it's only after you complete the avodah with the asham, which is then matter to do what you have to with the oil. Therefore, the din of pigel takes effect on the oil, according to Rab Meir. The Chachamim disagree with this, though. Chachamim say since the oil could be done on a completely separate day, so it's separate from the asham itself, the din of pigel never takes effect on the oil. Okay, so that's what we see here in this part of the Braise. It's Rav Meir. Says the Gemara, but now, what does it say afterwards in the Braise? That what does pigel not apply to? The minchas nesachim that are brought with a carbon. That's the flour and the oil, and the wine that you bring with many of the karbanis. And va'adam, and blood as well. So it's saying over here that the nesachim, there's no din of pigel on it. Asan l'Rabbanan, this is only according to the Rabbanan's opinion that say that because the minchas nesachim could be brought separately, so therefore pigel never applies to it. But Rab Meir holds that there would be pigel here. The Tanya, as we learned in the Braise, nische beheme, the libations, the wine and the flour that you bring with a carbon, chayavan aleim mishum pigel. If you eat from it, when the kayan had the machshava of pigel on the carbon itself, then the nesachim will get the status of pigel. Because after you spray the blood on the Mizbeach, just like that, then is matter to do the next stages of the Avodah, which is to burn the sacrificial parts of the Mizbeach. It's also matter to then do the Nesachim, to pour it on the Mizbeach. Divrei Rab Meir. This is what Rab Meir also. Rab Meir here says that there is the din of pigel regarding the Nesachim. Amrullah, so the Chachamim argue with him and say, but V'alei Adam Mevi es V'chavayim. You can bring the carbon today, unisachin, and then when it comes to the nisachin, you can mikana the sara yomim. You can bring it up to 10 days later. So you see that it's not connected to the carbon. When it's brought 10 days later, it's separate. Amalehen, so Rab Meir says, Afani lo yamarti ela baba nimazevach. True, I said only when it's brought on the same day together with the carbon. So then You're waiting for the carbon, to the zrika of the dam with the carbon to be completed, and only then are you going to do the nesachim. So in such a case, the nesachim is something which became mutter from an aveda that was done before, and that was the similarity to Shlomo that we learned that only then does the pigel take effect. So the point is, we see here that Rab Meir holds that there is a din of pigel regarding the nesachim. So in the Seifa of this Braisa, it says that there's no pigel for the nesachim. So the Reisha is Rab Meir, and the Seifa is the Chachamim. Amar Rav Yosef, Rav Yosef says there's a different shot in this Braisa, and it's a third opinion. Hamani Rebbe. This Braisa could be Rebbe's opinion. The Amar Rebbe says loik shemesh al mitzayreh. Going back to the Reisha of the Braisa, when it spoke about the oil by the mitzayreh, matnoisav sharule. It's actually the matonis, what you spray with this oil itself, that is where the whole pigel is. What does this mean? According to Rabbi, the Gemara is not saying, as explained before, we thought that the concept of pigel regarding the oil of this carbon is that the Kayan had the machshava of pigel when he sprayed the blood of the carbon asham. And then it affects not only the other parts of the carbon, but it also affects the oil. Now the Gemara is saying that according to Rebbe, even if you are doing the what has to be done with this oil on a completely separate day, but it doesn't matter. There could be a din of pigel here. Why? Because there's two parts to what you do with this oil. First, you take this oil and it's sprayed against the pareches. After it's sprayed against the pareches 7 times, then you take that oil and you place it on the right ear, on the right fingers and toenail, on the toes that is. So regarding the oil itself, if the kohen, when he sprayed it at the pareches, and he had then the machshave that he's going to eat it out of its time, because even regarding this oil, you could also only eat it for 2 days and a night. You can't eat it forever. So then he had the machshave when he's spraying the oil that he's going to eat it out of its time. So then this oil afterwards, when he's done putting it on the body of the mitzvah and he eats from it, the status of pigel is going to take effect. That's the chiddush of Rebbe. It's not even connected to the bloods of the carbon. It's within the oil itself. Okay, so because matnoisav sharule, so Rebbe holds this concept that the spraying of the oil is what then permits you to eat from it. Since I see that Rebbe holds that regarding the oil, it's not just the blood of the carbon, but it's also the spraying of the oil itself that then permits you to use it to put on the body of the mitzayra and then to eat from it. So mefaglile, the machshava of pigel when you spray the oil at the pareiches will take effect. Where do we see Rabbi said this? Because the Tanya and a Braisa we learned, loig shemesh al mitzayre, this leg of oil that's used for the mitzayre, mayelum by the halacha of meila, that you misappropriate hektish applies to this. All the halachas of meila will take effect there. It's kachim, it's hektish. Until when? Yizrek adam. Until you spray the blood of the carbon that it's brought with. The blood of the carbon asham. That's the Tanakama's opinion here. But once nizar kadam, once the blood was sprayed, so then minatayre, this oil is now mutter to have a na from it. But still, midrabanan, you're not supposed to, until you do what has to be done with the oil. Lay nanin, midrabanan, you still should not have a na from it, but v'lay mailin, the halacha of mila does not take effect. So we see here the Tanakama says that it's the blood. The blood is matter. Once you finish the zrika of the dam, that's matter, the usage of this oil. However, Rebbe says, mailin achitim at noisav, that no, there's going to be me'ila in the oil. It's not enough that you spray the blood. Until you spray from the oil on the pareiches 7 times, until then, min atayra, there'll be me'ila in the oil itself. So you see regarding the oil itself, that the matonis of the oil is a matter. It's then matter to use this oil. Now, B'Shavin, both the Tanakama and Rebbe agree that she'asa ba'achila, that you're not supposed to eat them in the Rabbanan. You're not supposed to eat from this oil at she'yitem matan sheva, until you do everything that has to be done with this oil. You spray it 7 times on the pareiches, and then on matan b'hainis, you spray it, it's placed rather on the ears, and then on the bayin, on the finger tips, and on the toes as well. Okay, so you see, so therefore, the Gemara wants to say, based on this concept, this is Rav Yosef's answer, that this brayser that's talking about the shemen regarding oil, when it's brought on a separate day, there could be pigel, because within the oil itself, there could be a machshava of pigel that will passel it. But it's not Rab Meir, it's not the Chachamim. This answer was said in front of Rabbi Yirmiyah. So Rabbi Yirmiyah commented about this answer. Gabre, Rabbe, Rav Yosef, Lemeki ha milsa. A great person like Rav Yosef could give such a kind of an answer. It can't be, because harei loig haba b'fnei atzmai. If you are now doing what has to be done with this oil for the mitzayre on a separate day, not together with the carbon asham. Everybody will agree that it's only after you spray this oil on the parecha 7 times that only then is it allowed to be used to eat from it, but at the same time, there's no din of pigul here. Pigul has to be when the Kayan had the machshava of pigul in the blood of the carbon. But this new concept that the Gemara tried to say, Rabbi Yosef is trying to say, based on what Rebbe said, that there's a concept of pigul, that in the machshava, that the machshava of pigul could be on the oil itself, we don't find such a thing. The Tanya, we learned in the Braise, loik shemesh mitzayre, when it comes to this oil of the mitzayre, chayav and olav mishum pigul, you are chayiv if you eat from it for the kares of pigul. When is that? Mipnei shedam matirei lebahinis. That's because of the blood of the carbon asham that you bring with it, that is matter to then use it to place on the fingers of the mitzayre. Divrei Rab Meir. So then they said to Rab Meir, but you can bring the carbon asham today. You can bring the loig of the oil 10 days later. So how could you say that it's the blood that's being mattered if it's in a whole different time? So Rab Meir says, but you're right. I only said that the loig of shemen could become pigul if it's brought together with the carbon asham. So you see here in this Braise that the whole discussion between Rab Meir and the Chachamim regarding the loig of oil is that the machshava of pigul, when you spray the blood, would affect the oil. But not a machshava of pigul when you're spraying the oil itself on the parecha 7 times. So the Gemara here, Rabbi Yirmiyah says that even though in this Braise it's a machlokes between Rebbe and Rab Meir that is, and the Chachamim, but from here we see that everybody agrees to this, that there's no such a thing as a machshava of pigul regarding the oil itself. So Rabbi Yirmiyah, so therefore Rabbi Yirmiyah says regarding the contradiction in the Braise, Rab Meir, that Braise is Rab Meir, and therefore in the Reisha it's saying that by oil there is pigul, and the Sami Mikan Nisachim. Then in the Sefer when it says that by the Nisachim there is no pigul, you have to erase that, because according to Rab Meir, just like by the oil there's pigul, by the Nisachim, when it's brought together with the carbon on the same day, then there is pigul, so you have to erase that. Abaye says, you don't have to erase Nesachim. And the Reisha and the Sefer of the Braise are 2 different cases. In the beginning of the Braise, when it speaks about the oil, and it says that there is pigul there, that's the leg that's brought together on the same day with the Asham. There, Rab Meir says that there's pigul. And the same would apply also to the Nesachim that are brought together with the carbon, that pigul applies. And then when it says that by the Nesachim there's no pigul, it's referring to the Nesachim that are brought themselves on a different day. And there it would also apply to the leg of the oil of the mitzayre if it's brought on a separate day that there's no pigul. So it's two completely different things. The Reisha and the Sefer, it's not a contradiction. It's all Rab Meir. Going back to another detail in the Braise, it said chatas ha'oif, that the bird that's brought as a carbon chatos, dama, when you spray the blood or you squeeze it on the mizbeach, mater as besar lekainim. So the basar of this bird, the kain can eat from it. What's the source for this? There's no clear pasuk that says that the kain can eat from the basar of this oif, and it's a big chiddush you could. Why? Because what do you do? How do you you don't shech the bird? There's malika, which is done with the fingernail of the kain to cut off the head of the bird. So you may think that there's no kosher shchita, so it should be called an avela. How could the kain eat from this? So therefore the Gemara here brings a braisa that goes through different details, and one of them is this, chatas ha'oif, that the kain does eat from it. So this is here the Gemara brings the Tani Levi. The Levi taught in the braisa. Here's a pasuk where it says in Parshas Kairach, where the Torah brings the list of all the different matnas kahuna. After the machlekes of Kairach with Aaron HaKayin, the Torah comes and says all these matnas kahuna belong to Aaron. And here there's a pasuk with a whole list that it says kol again in the pasuk a few times. You have over here the pasuk over there. Kol karbanam, kol mechasam, l'chol chatasam, l'chol hasham asher yeshiva l'kodesh kadashim, l'chol u'levanecha. So what do you learn out from all these extra words of kol? So Levi taught when it says kol karbanam l'rabas loig shemesh al mitzayre. That kol is coming to say that this leg of the oil by the mitzayre that we were talking about before, that who gets the leftovers of it? The kayin gets it to use it. Why do I need an extra dibui for this? Because I would otherwise think to say mina eish kosav rachmana. The pasuk there uses the expression. It says that things that come from the fire of the carbon. So the oil has nothing to do with the fire. Kamash Malan, therefore it says, Kol Karbanam, including the oil that's used by the Mitzayda, the Kain eats it. Then the pasuk says, L'chol minchasa. So what is the chol over here coming to add? L'rabis minchas aymer, that the flour that's left from the aymer goes to the kain, and also minchas aknois, the carbon mincha that's brought for the saita, for the woman that we're trying to determine whether she had a relationship outside of her marriage or not, that is also eaten by the kain. Why do I need a special pasuk for this? Because otherwise I would say the pasuk says that the kain eats from the carbon which was brought for a kapara, for an atonement. The carbon minchas ha'omer is brought on the second day of Pesach to be matter, to eat from the barley or from the grain from the new season, not for a kapara. Or minchas knois. The mincha by the saita is just coming to clarify whether she sinned or not. It's not a kapara. Kamash malan. Therefore, this call adds that this as well the kohen eats from it. Now it says ulachal chatasam. Here comes the point that we were looking for. L'rabbis chatasayif. This comes to say that the kohen eats from the chatasayif. Otherwise, I would say nevelahi. Since it's only melika, not a proper shchita, it should be a nevela. So therefore, it says that the kohen does get to eat from this. Then the pasuk goes on to say, "L'chol ashamam," for all of the meat of the carbon asham, l'rabbis asham nazir, v'asham mitzayre. This includes even the asham of a nazir and a mitzayre. That also the meat goes to the kayin. So because I would think to say lahachshir ka'asu. These are karbanis that are not here for any kapara. It's just here to be machshir the nazir, that in order to be able to continue his naziris, if he became tamei, so be able to continue his naziris, or the mitzayre as well, in order for him to be able to eat again from karbanis. So therefore, this is not a kapara that the kain can eat from this meat. So kamash malan. Therefore, it says here in the pasuk l'chol that the kain does eat from it. Now the Gemara asks on one detail, Asham Mitzayre. You're saying that it comes to include also the Asham Mitzayre, Behed Yiksiv Bey. In the pasuk by the parsha of Mitzayre, it clearly says there, Kachata Sa Asham Hu Lakayin, that he eats from the meat from the carbon Asham. So why are we saying that we're marbit from this pasuk here? El Rabbis Asham Nazir Ka Asham Mitzayre. The way to read the Lashon the Braise is that it's being marbit the Asham of the Nazir, like the Asham of Mitzayre, just like the Asham of Mitzayre that the Torah clearly says that the kain eats from it. The same with the Asham of the Nazir. The last thing that Braise there says that you learn out from that pasuk it's in the Parshas Kairach, where it speaks about all the matnas kahuna. So the pasuk there concludes and says, Asher yashivu, lashon over there is Asher yashivu li, what will be returned to me. Kodesh kodashim l'cha levanecha. What do we learn from this? Zeh gezel hager. This is a case where someone steals from a ger, and now he has to return it, and the ger dies, and he has no inheritors. Who do you give it to? It goes to the kayin. And Rashi says this includes the gzela itself, but it also includes something else. If a person swears falsely regarding something that he stole, and then he's made that he swore falsely, so you give back not only the principal, but you have to give back a chaimish, an additional fifth. Who does that go to? It also goes to the kayin. L'chahu, it goes to the kayin. Now Rashi here points out that this halacha of gezel ager, it actually says it clearly in the Torah in another place. I think it's in Parshas Nasai, but the Torah repeats it here in this parsha in Kairach, because it lists all the matnas kohanos. So the Torah is repeating this Indian again to say that Rashi says that over here there was the machlokes on Kairach against Aaron HaKohen, and this was something that Aaron HaKohen suffered from, and the Torah wants to say to him that after whatever you suffered, you're going to get the additional matanis, that the lists that Aaron HaKohen gets. Yeah. So there's another detail that you learn from the word l'chahu. The Gemara says shalcha yeh. When it says l'cha regarding this money of the gezel ager, this means afilu l'kadosh b'yisisha. That belongs to the kayin. That it's completely his. It's chulin. He owns it completely. He can use it to be mekadosh isha. But not regarding the other things that it said in the pasuk before. It's the pasuk here mixes two things together, because it says kodesh kadoshim l'chahu. Things that are kodesh kadoshim, the kain can eat it, but according to our Gemara here, the kain can't use it though as his own personal thing to be mekadosh a woman. But when it comes to the gezel ager, when the ger died, you give it to the kain. That's something that's completely his. He can use it to be mekadosh a wife.
Because it's chulin.
It's completely chulin. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to the point that we spoke about before, the opinion of Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon, he learned out from the carbon, from this that it says, the din of pigel by the carbon shlomim, that the din of pigel only applies to what's similar to the shlomim. In what sense? That the blood is sprayed on the outside mizbeach. However, the Tanakama and the Braisa said that even a carbon that's sprayed on the inside Mizbeach, by all kachim, the din of pigul applies. So here the Gemara brings a Braisa where there is a third opinion about this. Tanya, Rabbi Lazai, Mishon Rabbi Yesi Aglili, pigel, the davar hanasa b'chutz. If you had the machshava of pigel regarding something where the avodah is being done outside, so then pigel, the pigel will take effect. Pigel b'davar hanasa b'fneim. If, however, the pigel is regarding something that's done inside in the Beis Hamikdash, loy pigel, then the pigel does not take effect. Now, this is not the opinion of Rab Shimon that I just mentioned. It's a little bit different, and the Gemara here spells out what this means. Okay, even regarding that carbon chatos, that the blood is sprayed inside the Beis Hamikdash, there are though parts of the aveda that's done outside. So, according to this Tana, according to Rabbi Yesi Aglili, the machshava of pigel and the actual aveda of pigel that you're doing right now has to all be bachutz. So pigel could take effect regarding a carbon that the blood is sprayed inside, but only if the whole entire pigel was in the part of the carbon that's outside. The Braisa itself explains this. Keitzat, how does this play out? So he's standing outside and he's now shechting the carbon. And he says, he has the pigel, and he says as follows: Hareini shechet, I'm shechting this carbon, lahazais midami lemachar. And the machshava of pigel is that I'm going to spray the blood tomorrow. Like pigel.
Shechting.
It's not going to be widely shechting is having this machshava about the blood, so then it's not going to be pigel. Shemachshava b'chutz b'davar nasa b'fnim le'hoya pigel, because yes, he's standing outside when he's shechting, but what is this machshava of pigel regarding spraying the blood? The spraying of the blood is inside the Beis Hamikdash. So since the machshava is regarding a part of the aveda that's done inside, the pigel doesn't take effect. And the same thing if it's the opposite. What's if now he's standing inside the Beis Hamikdash with the blood of this carbon, spraying it on the inside Mizbeach? And then he has the machshava of pigel that areini mazeh, I'm going to spray now on the inside Mizbeach, almanas lahaktere murim, because and he's thinking that he's going to burn on the Mizbeach out of its time, or lishbayach shirayim, or spill the blood on the outside Mizbeach lemachar, outside. So like pigel, over here the pigel does not take effect either. Even though the machshava of the pigel is regarding an aveda that's done outside, but now he's actually standing inside though. So as the Braisa says, shemachshava b'fnim, because if you have that machshava while you're standing inside, even though it's b'davar hanasa b'chutz, even though it's regarding an aveda that's done outside, the pigel doesn't take effect. When does pigel take effect regarding this kind of carbon, where there's a part of it that's brought inside, the blood that's sprayed inside? But he's standing outside and he's shechting the carbon now. And he thinks to himself, I'm shechting it with the machshava of pigel regarding a part of this carbon that's done outside. The shirayim, the leftovers of the blood, will be spilled on the outside mizbeach out of its time. Or the parts that have to be burnt on the mizbeach will be burnt out of its time. Pigel. Then the pigel takes effect. Shemachshava b'chutz. Because if he has that thought of pigel when he's standing outside and shechting, regarding a part of the aveda that's done outside, that's where it's going to be pigel. Regarding this, we compare it to the shlomim. So this is a new opinion. The Tanakama that we brought before held that regarding all kachim, there's pigel. And that means even while you're doing the aveda inside, or when you're doing the aveda outside, regarding something you're doing inside, there's no limitation. There's always pigel. On the other hand, Rab Shimon said that the machshava of pigel only applies to something that's similar to shlamim, when you spray it outside. Here, Rabbi Yisek Lili says that regarding these karbanos that you bring the blood inside, there's a limitation. Pigel is only regarding something that now you're outside, and your machshava is to do something that's done outside, chutz l'zmanai. Rabbi Shimon ben Levi, so Rabbi Shimon ben Levi says, my kara, where do I have a source for this new halacha that Rabbi Yisek Lili says? Because it says kasher yura mishoyer zevach hashlamim. This is a pasuk that it says by the par kohen Mashiach. When a kohen gadol has to bring a carbon chatos, the pasuk there concludes and says that you should do for this carbon like you do for the shoyer zevach shlamim. The question is, it's extra. Why are we comparing it to the shlamim? What do I learn from the shlamim? All the details that has to be done with the par kohen Mashiach, the Torah spells out here. So why is it additionally comparing it to the shlamim? Ella, the answer is Makish Parkay Mashiach l'Shoy Zavach Hashlamim. We compare the Parkay Mashiach, which is an example of this kind of a carbon that the blood is brought inside the Beis Hamikdash. So now we compare it to the Shlomim. Masher Zevochim Shlamim, just like by the halacha of pigel regarding the shlamim. Ad sheyu ma'asav u'machshaveisav al mizbeach hachitzon. So over there, the pigel takes effect when he's doing the avodah outside, and his machshava is also regarding the avodah that's done outside, because by the shlamim there is only avodah outside. You don't bring it inside the Beis Hamikdash. So af par kaya Mashiach. So too by the par kaya Mashiach, which is a carbon that you bring the blood inside, but the pigel is only if the thought you're having is now when you're standing outside, and it's regarding an avodah that will be done on the outside mizbeach. That's the source. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabbi bar Avua, Amar Rav, halacha ke Rabbi Lazar, she'amar mishum Rabbi Yosi. We paskin like Rabbi Lazar that said this in the name of Rabbi Yosi. Amar Rav, so Rav comments on this. So the other gersa here is that this is Rav Yosef that said about this. Halilchase lemashiach. Are you saying a halacha that's only relevant when Mashiach comes? It's not negaya now. When the Beis Hamikdash will be built, then this halacha will be negaya. But now it's not relevant. So why are you saying here that the halacha is like Rabbi Lazar in the name of Rabbi Yosi? Amalei Abaye. So Abaye says back to Rav Yosef, Elamayata. So now kol shchitas kachim, the entire Masechtas Zevochim, which the Gemara refers to as shchitas kachim. Loi lisni. We shouldn't be learning the whole Masechtas Zevochim, because Hilchos and Mashiach, these are all things that are only relevant when Mashiach comes, when the Beis Hamikdash is built. So Ella, what's the answer? Droish v'kibul schar. You expound and you learn all of this, and you get reward for the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. The mitzvah of Talmud Torah is not only when it's relevant to know what you have to do; it's a mitzvah for itself to learn the inyanim of Torah. So Halchanami here as well. Droish v'kibul schar. I'm saying the halacha, so I'm darshaning to get reward for this. And so what's the problem that I'm saying the halacha? So the Gemara says, Hachi kamin alach. Rav Yosef responded and said, no, this is what I was asking. Hilchas elamali. Why is it necessary to say who the halacha is like? Of course you can learn the details of all the halachas of shchitas kachim, but to say who the halacha is like, why did you have to say that? That's not relevant only until the Beis Hamikdash is built. Amalei, or Lishna Achrene, there was another version of the way this was said. Amalei, Rav Yosef said, halacha kamin. The fact that you said who the halacha is like, that's what my question was. It's not exactly clear to me what's the difference between the first lashon and the second lashon, but that's the point of it. That why do you say the halacha? Okay, but there's a big discussion about this. There's a places here and others that speak about this. Just one point about this inyan. Rav Yosef had this taina that it's not necessary to say the halacha, but to payil, it seems from the Gemara this was Rav Yosef, but all the other Tanaim and Amirayim didn't hold of what Rav Yosef said, and the raya is from the Rambam. The Rambam wrote a Sefer Ayad, and he wrote La Halacha L'Maisa, all the halachas that are relevant for Bizman Beis Hamikdash Kayim. Why? Because it's necessary to know the halachas of the Beis Hamikdash, and even the halacha L'Maisa Bizman Hazeh, because any moment the Beis Hamikdash could be built, and you have to know right away, not just the details, but who the halacha actually is like. So therefore, most Amirayim held that we have to know the halacha L'Maisa. For now.